Hey guys, welcome back to Fix It Friday. So this week I'm going to be doing a repair for a change, and I felt like mixing it up just because I haven't done a repair on the channel in a long time, and it's something that I really enjoy doing. So what I have here today is one of the Pokemon Pikachu Nintendo 64s. These are really cool. They're kind of desirable, especially amongst the Pokemon fans for obvious reasons. I mean, I really don't get too many broken 64s, but I'm lucky enough here to have one that I can repair. So as you guys can no doubt tell, it does boot games because I have it in the background there, but as you can also hear, there is no sound. So this thing does seem to work perfectly, except for the fact that there is absolutely no sound coming out of the multi-out port. So this isn't too common of a fault, but yeah, I thought it would be an interesting thing to troubleshoot together. I'm not really sure if I'll be able to fix it or not, but let's go ahead and take a look at this thing, see what's going on inside, and try to get it running again. All right, let's get started. All right, so as you guys can see, this thing is in really, really nice shape. I mean, there's the usual minor scuffs here and there, but otherwise someone took very good care of this thing. So yeah, let's go ahead and take it apart. What we're going to do is start with a Gambit screwdriver like this, and there are 6 screws underneath. This is the same as any normal Nintendo 64. And then once that is removed, what I like to do is just pull it out, and this will automatically remove the memory module that's in there as well. The memory pack. There we go. So now, one thing that's different from a standard 64 is that there is this little connector here. This is for the LEDs that are inside of Pikachu, so you just have to sever that connection right there. Here's the little board that controls how the LEDs blink. Okay, and then once you have the console part, you'll notice that this one is a late model of the 64. It's a CPU09, so it has a different type of heatsink, and it looks a little different compared to the normal ones. And I've already gone ahead and removed all of the screws, and the important thing is just to keep in mind where they all go. They're all Phillips. You might need a smaller screwdriver for these two, but otherwise, like your generic, screwdriver like this will take care of all of the rest. So once that's all done, I'm going to take it out of the shell here, and I'm going to remove it, the heatsink, like this, from pushing from the back to the front. And that's just so that we don't lift up this RAM chip right here. Okay. All right, so there we go. So as you can see, it's just your standard Nintendo 64 motherboard. The only real difference is just where the LED goes. All right, so let's have a closer look at this thing and see how the audio circuit works. Okay, so when you're diagnosing a fault like this, it can usually be one of a few possible reasons for the problem. One problem might be that there's simply a cut trace on the board somewhere. So that means that, the sound is just simply severed on the left and right channels somewhere, so it's not getting to the final output. Another problem could be a corroded multi-out, and in this case, I definitely know that's not the case. This is a very clean board. And then finally, there could be a problem with a chip, or maybe more than one chip. Maybe they've partially failed, and that's why we're not getting sound. So what I have here in front of us is the schematics for the Nintendo 64. So Nintendo's official schematics have never been publicly released, and so people have made their own. And you can find a lot of these, or most of them really, on Console 5's Tech Wiki. That's a really nice resource. It has a ton of really good information about schematics for all sorts of video game consoles and even some computers. So right now what I have here is the schematics for the Nintendo 64. This is for an older revision of the hardware, so it doesn't 100% apply to what we have here. But it's still useful for getting an idea of how things work. So what you can see over here is this is the Super Nintendo multi-out that's on the 64, and you can see left and right audio are here. And so if you just simply follow the lines, you can see where audio goes on the schematic. So you can see it goes to a couple of resistors, 2 electrolytics, and then from there it goes to this chip called Amp NUS. So it's an audio amplifier. And thankfully this has been reversed, and people know exactly what each pin corresponds to. So the top 2 pins here are left and right channel out, and it looks like left and right channel in are right over here, these 2 pins right here. Now on this revision, it goes to this smaller chip, and from there it goes to the large RCP. Now, because we have a later revision, this is not the same for our console. So let's go ahead and take a look at it and see if we can deduce the rest of the pathway. Okay, so now what we've got here is our motherboard, and let's just see how this one differs from the one that's in the schematic. That was an 03 or 04 revision. This is the 09, so it's much later in the production line of the 64. And so I did trace it out, and most of what's going on from the multi-out to the amplifier chip is the same. So here's the outputs, and then these two pins over here are the inputs. And what I was able to trace is that those inputs go to these two vias right here. So there's this one. Got to turn on my meter, sorry. So it goes straight to here. And then this is, I believe, right channel input. And so the way I'm figuring all of this out is through the use of my multimeter. I have it set to continuity mode, which is this icon right here. And so if there's a connection between 2 points, the multimeter will beep. So that tells me both that the trace is working and good, and also how things are connected. It can be tough to do this sometimes because sometimes vias run underneath chips and they can be really tricky. It actually took me a little while to find these two vias, but eventually I knew if I poked around, I'd be able to do just that. So now let's flip the board over and see what those vias connect to. And this can also be tricky because you've got to look back and figure out, okay, where was I? In fact, I need to do that again really quick. All right. So they're here. So these two vias, they connect to these ceramic capacitors, and then they just jump back to these other two vias right over here. So now we got to flip the board over again. And now I can tell it's this via here and this one. And so both of those connect up to this chip. This is the MAV NUS chip. So I know that this is related to video because this chip is used for the N64 RGB, but it looks like it also handles sound as well. So it looks like what they did with the later revisions is that they integrated the sound and video functions into a single chip right here. I don't entirely know how this chip works, but I know that it's gonna get audio input directly connected probably on some of these chips. So basically the pathway is going from the RCP to the MAV, to the amplifier, and then to the multi-out. So now that we've got our pathway, and I think I've determined that most or all of the traces are intact, that probably tells me that, you know, maybe these electrolytics are bad. I kind of doubt it though. The chips might be bad, and I'm thinking it's at least one of the chips that's bad. So now how do we figure that out? Well, let's go ahead and grab the oscilloscope, and we're gonna run this thing and see how these pins look with sound and try to use those waveform patterns to determine where the failure is. Okay, so I've got my oscilloscope hooked up, and this tool is going to allow me to look at all of the various pins that I just talked about. So I can look at the input and output of the amplifier, I can look at the output at least of the MAV chip, and this will allow me to basically see what the audio waveforms are looking like. So if I have a chip that's producing audio waveforms, then that's great. That tells me, all right, this chip is probably working. If I see absolutely nothing, then that's going to tell me, okay, this chip might be faulty. So the way I have this set up is that I have the ground clipped on right over here, and then I'm going to have this little probe and carefully touch each of the pins that I'm interested in, and that will allow me to test each one of these chips respectively. Just as a warning, when you plug in a 64 like this, it's not so great. Like the 64 really needs the heatsink in order to keep these chips cool. And so you have a very short period of time to test. You can't just leave this thing on for, you know, hours or something, or you're going to destroy it. So I have the memory pack in with the grill facing backwards. I've got a game, I've got AV, and I've got power, but I'm not going to leave this thing powered for very long. It's just going to be for some very quick tests just to see what is going on here. All right, so let's go ahead and give it a test. Yeah, and predictably, there is nothing going on with output. Now let's take a look at input. Oh, hang on a second. I need a controller. Oh boy. Sorry for that. This game will not produce sound unless there's a controller connected. All right, let's try that again. There we go. There should be sound. And I am seeing no changes. So these are the inputs coming in. Oh, look at that. If I hit auto, yes, okay. So we have sound coming out of the MAV chip. See that? There is sound coming out of the MAV chip. Now, if I go to the output, though, here's the output of the amplifier. And I got nothing. Absolutely nothing. Do that again. Sound. No sound. Okay, well, there we go. That's all I needed to know. So that quick little test saves me a lot of time. I know I can leave this MAV chip alone, and it seems like it's just the amplifier that's bad. Thankfully, I have a parts board, and I'm going to pull the amplifier chip off of that and replace it. And let's just see if that takes care of our sound problems. Okay, so we're going to remove our suspected faulty chip right here. And what I'm going to do is use this product called ChipQuick to do that. It's definitely the easiest way to get surface mount components off of a board. So it consists of a type of flux, this paste that it comes with as part of a kit, and then here's the ChipQuick solder. It's like a low temperature solder, so it stays molten for a very long period of time with low temperatures. So all I got to do is flow it onto all of these pins. And then at this point, I could either use a heat gun, but this is a small chip, so I'm just going to kind of rock it back and forth on all the legs. And I don't really care about the chip. There we go. Just came right off. So yeah, the important thing here was keeping the pads safe. Okay, so now I'm just going to clean this ChipQuick off of the pads. So I'm going to get my normal no clean flux, and I have some solder braid, and I'm just going to use that to absorb up all that stuff and clean up these pads and make it look good. All right, and there we go. It looks pretty damn clean, and there's no damage to the pads. And now we are ready to get the donor chip. All right, so I've cleaned this area up with alcohol, and then I pulled the amplifier chip off of my donor board and also went through the process of cleaning that as well. So now let's go ahead and put them on. And so what we're gonna do is just use these tweezers to line things up, and I'll usually do the corners first to make sure that it's exactly where I want it to be. And I'll use some flux as well. And once I'm happy with that, then I go ahead and commit and solder in all the other points. Okay, so that's it. Let's go ahead and power this thing on again and see if this time we have sound. All right, so I've got the 64 only partially reassembled. I just decided to put the heatsink on so that I don't have to worry about overheating related issues. But otherwise, it's the exact same setup as before. I've got my controller and my memory card and power and AV. So let's go ahead and see if it works. If not, then I didn't put it back in the shell, so I can easily take this thing apart and, you know, investigate some more with the oscilloscope. Okay. Hey. Okay, nice. Well, that's great. Looks like this thing is fixed. We've got sound and everything is playing. So it's another Nintendo 64 back from the dead. So yeah, hopefully this, quick little video illustrates just how useful schematics are and how useful it is to have tools like either a logic probe or an oscilloscope, because it really lets you probe a circuit that is questionable and really helps to pinpoint exactly where the fault lies and makes, diagnosis and repair so much easier. Yeah, so that's it for this week's video. And yeah, if you guys like this kind of content, then consider subscribing to the channel. I have videos out like this every Friday, although next week I will not, because I will be at Too Many Games, which is a video game con just outside of Philadelphia. So hopefully if you guys are going, I hope to see you guys there. I'll have a booth. Yeah, thanks again for watching. Bye.